Ladies and gentlemen, I want to begin today with a question, one that has shaped more destinies than talent, more futures than luck, more outcomes than opportunity. And here it is. What happens to a life built on good intentions but weak follow-through? Because I've met a lot of people with dreams, wonderful dreams, grand dreams, dreams that make you sit up a little straighter just hearing them. But dreams without consistency, well, those become souvenirs of what might have been. You see, most people do not fail because they lack intelligence. They do not fail because they lack ambition. They fail because they drift. They allow the winds of feeling to replace the rudder of a plan. And drifting, my friends, is the quiet crisis of our time. It doesn't make noise. It doesn't announce itself. But slowly, over months and years, it takes you off course, far from the shore you intended to reach. Imagine a boat out on the ocean with no rudder. It doesn't matter how beautiful the boat is. It doesn't matter how much potential it has. Without direction, it simply goes wherever the current decides. And that's how too many people live, move, not by purpose, but by mood, not by design, but by impulse, not by commitments, but by feelings. And let me tell you something important about feelings. They make wonderful passengers, but terrible captains. Your feelings will tell you, rest a little longer. Your feelings will whisper, start tomorrow. Your feelings will say, you deserve a break. And of course, there's always some truth to that occasionally. But if feelings are steering the ship, you'll end up far from the life you had planned. So today, I want to introduce a different approach. A model for climbing from drifting to dangerous. Dangerous not in the sense of harming anyone, but dangerous to every limitation that has held you back. Dangerous to procrastination. Dangerous to excuses. Dangerous to the version of you that settles instead of rises. There are 3 levels, simple levels, but transformative if you choose to climb them. Level 1, the level of decision, where you choose to follow your plan, not your feelings. Level 2, the level of identity, where consistency becomes who you are, not just what you do. Level 3, the level of marketplace power, where your consistency creates results so reliable that life itself starts rewarding you. If you understand these 3 levels, and if you choose to move through them with intention, the next year of your life will look radically different from the last. But first, we begin right here with the recognition that drifting isn't a problem of destiny, it's a problem of direction. And direction begins with understanding why consistency is the foundation of everything you hope to build. Now, before we climb into level 1, we have to understand why consistency matters so deeply, why it sits beneath every extraordinary life as the foundation stone. Because once you understand the why, the how becomes much easier. Let me give you a simple idea to start. Success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. And failure, well, failure is just as simple, just a few small errors in judgment repeated every day. That's all. Not a cataclysmic event, not a dramatic collapse, just small missteps accumulated quietly, patiently over time. It's a fascinating thing to consider. 2 people get up on Monday morning. One decides to read for 30 minutes. The other decides to scroll for 30 minutes. On that one day, it doesn't look like much. They both start the same day with the same energy, the same time, the same opportunity. But multiply that Monday by 365, and suddenly one person has read hundreds of hours, explored dozens of books, expanded their mind, and the other has scrolled through a mountain of nothing. Same minutes, different choices, different futures. You see, consistency is the great equalizer. It takes ordinary people and turns them into extraordinary performers. It takes small habits and turns them into large outcomes. It takes the invisible and makes it obvious. Because here's the truth most people overlook. Your habits are a bank account. Every action is a deposit or a withdrawal. And the balance doesn't lie. If you make one little deposit exercise today, save a little money today, study a little today, you may not feel the difference. That's the trick life plays. The reward is delayed, but if you make that same deposit tomorrow and the next day and the next, The compound effect begins to work in your favor, and compounding, my friends, is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. Let me tell you a story. Years ago, I encouraged a young man to read 10 pages of a good book every day. That's it. 10 pages. Not a heroic effort, not a feat of strength, but he did it. For a whole year. And after a year, he said, Jim, I didn't just read books, I changed my mind. Of course he did. 10 pages a day doesn't just build knowledge, it builds identity, it builds confidence, it builds momentum, and momentum is a priceless asset. But here's the other side of the coin. If you skip the 10 pages today, it doesn't ruin your life. If you skip the workout today, nothing collapses. If you waste a little money today, you don't see the damage. And that's why inconsistency is so dangerous, because the penalty is invisible at first. But invisible does not mean harmless. These small errors compound too, just in the opposite direction. Consistency is the foundation because it is the only way to escape the tyranny of your feelings. It is the only way to protect your future from the whims of the present. It is the only way to make sure tomorrow is better than today. So before we move forward, let me give you the very heart of this philosophy. Your life changes when your daily disciplines change. Not your emotions, not your wishes, not your hopes, your daily disciplines. And that, my friends, brings us to the first level of transformation, the point where you stop drifting and begin steering your own ship. Now, let's move into the first level. And this level, my friends, is where everything truly begins. We call it level 1, the level of decision. This is where a person finally decides, really decides to follow their plan instead of their feelings. Not someday, not when it's convenient, but starting now. You see, most people don't make a clear decision. They make wishes, they make preferences, they make hopeful statements. But a genuine decision, one backed by action, backed by commitment, backed by behavior, that's rare. And that rarity is exactly why success is rare. Here's the truth. Your life doesn't change when you think about changing. It changes when you commit to a plan and agree to follow it whether you feel like it or not. That's the difference. I remember telling someone years ago, if you wait for the feeling to be right, you'll never start. And if you only act when the feeling is right, you'll never finish. And that's exactly what we're up against. Feelings that negotiate. Feelings that bargain. Feelings that whisper. Later, tomorrow, next week. And if you listen long enough, feelings will run your entire life. So level 1 requires something simple, but not easy. A decision that the plan will be the boss, not the mood. A decision that you will honor your commitment more than your comfort. Now, what does this look like in real life? It looks like choosing to walk for 20 minutes every morning, even when the bed feels warm and the world feels cold. It looks like reading those 10 pages, even when you're tired. It looks like saving that small amount, even when spending feels good. It looks like writing the business idea down, even when you feel uncertain. And in the moment, let me tell you, it won't feel heroic. Most of the time, it will feel inconvenient. Sometimes it will feel uncomfortable. But don't confuse discomfort with weakness. Discomfort is simply the price of growth. Discomfort is the doorway to progress. Let me offer you a small technique, one I've shared with many students over the years. When your feelings start debating with your plan, don't negotiate, don't analyze, don't delay. Just count down from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, move. Why does it work? Because it interrupts the emotional pattern. It gives your plan a fighting chance before your feelings talk you out of it. At level 1, the goal isn't perfection. The goal is simply to show up, to practice keeping your word to yourself, even in the smallest ways. Because at this level, every kept promise becomes the foundation for something bigger. And every broken promise becomes a lesson. You know what's amazing about level 1? It doesn't require brilliance. It doesn't require greatness. It simply requires a moment, one moment, where you say, I will follow my plan today. And if you repeat that moment often enough, you begin building something priceless. Self-trust. And self-trust, my friends, is the soil where a new identity begins to grow. But before we climb into identity, we must address a danger that steals more dreams than fear, more progress than failure, more years than procrastination. And that danger is the restart penalty. Because if you understand it, you'll protect yourself from wasting months and years that could transform your life. Now, before we reach level 2, we have to face a truth that most people never understand. And because they never understand it, they spend their whole lives trapped in level 1, starting over again and again, never moving forward, never compounding their progress. It's what I call the restart penalty. And let me tell you, it's one of the most expensive penalties you'll ever pay. You see, starting something is easy. Everybody loves day 1. Day 1 is full of energy. Day 1 feels inspiring. Day 1 feels like change is just around the corner. But here's the challenge. Most people quit long before day 30. They quit before discipline becomes habit. They quit before effort becomes identity. They quit right at the moment when consistency is about to make life easier. And when they quit, what happens next? Well, they restart. And restarting, my friends, costs far more than people realize. Let me explain it simply. Every time you restart, you lose more than time, you lose trust in yourself, and self-trust is one of the most valuable assets you have. Lose that, and everything becomes harder. Everything becomes heavier. Everything feels like climbing uphill twice. Think for a moment about the person who starts a new diet every Monday. Monday comes, and they feel motivated. They feel ready. They feel committed. But by Thursday, the feelings change. And because the feelings change, the behavior changes. And because the behavior changes, the progress stops. And because the progress stops, the guilt sets in. And the guilt sets the stage for a fresh start the following Monday. And month after month, year after year, they live inside that same loop. Start, stop, and the restart penalty keeps growing. Let me tell you something I've observed after decades of watching people try to improve their lives. Starting over is not the problem. Staying stopped is not the problem. The problem is quitting right before the breakthrough, right before the habit becomes automatic, right before the effort becomes easier, right before the progress becomes visible. You see, success has a funny habit it hides for a while. It grows underground, and most people walk away long before anything has sprouted above the surface. They think the seed isn't working, but the seed was working all along. They just quit watering it. The restart penalty also destroys momentum, and momentum is one of life's great treasures. When you have it, everything accelerates. When you lose it, everything slows down. And here's something important to remember. It takes 10 units of effort to start something, and 1 unit of effort to keep it going. But most people keep paying the 10 units over and over again because they can't stay long enough to enjoy the 1. Let me give you a picture. Imagine pushing a heavy car. The first push, that's the hardest push in the world. You dig your feet in, you lean your shoulders forward, you strain, you sweat, you grind. But once the wheels begin to roll, something magical happens. It gets easier. The momentum starts doing part of the work for you. But imagine that every time you get the car moving, you let go. And next week, you're back behind that same car, pushing with the same strain, starting from zero again. That, my friends, is the restart penalty. And millions of people spend decades pushing the same car from the same starting point, never getting far enough for momentum to help. But here's the good news. Once you understand the restart penalty, you can escape it. You can choose to keep going long enough for consistency to take over. And when consistency takes over, something shifts inside you. You move from forcing yourself to becoming yourself. And that shift leads us to the next level, the level where consistency stops being an action and becomes a part of your character, your identity. Now, let's rise into level 2. And this is where the real transformation begins. Level 1 is about decision, but level 2 is about identity. And let me tell you, once you step into this level, everything about your life begins to shift, not because life gets easier, but because you become stronger. You see, in level 1, you are doing the discipline. You are forcing the habit. You are pushing the wheel, and that's good. That's where everyone begins. But in level 2, something subtle and powerful begins to happen. You stop trying to be disciplined, and you start seeing yourself as a disciplined person. And when identity changes, behavior follows without a fight. One of the great illusions about success is that people think it's about willpower. They think the high performer has more motivation, more energy, more fire in the belly. But let me assure you that's not the case. The person who lives consistently is not driven by endless motivation. They're driven by evidence. Evidence that they can trust themselves. Evidence that they are the kind of person who follows through. Evidence that their word, even to themselves, means something. Identity is shaped by evidence. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you cast a vote for the person you want to be. And with enough votes, the election is won. Think about that. Every small commitment you keep getting up on time, reading your pages, exercising, saving, studying, is not just a discipline. It's proof. And your mind keeps the proof. Your mind says, look at that. We said we would do it, and we did. And the next morning, there is less resistance because the identity is already leaning in the right direction. The opposite is also true. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you cast a vote for inconsistency, a vote for procrastination, a vote for the weaker version of you. And after enough votes in that direction, even small tasks feel heavy. Even simple goals feel out of reach. Not because they are, but because your identity whispers, we don't finish things. We don't follow through. Let me give you a story. I once knew a man who wanted to become an early riser. And for months, he tried to wake up at 5 a.m. He tried alarms, he tried motivation, he tried willpower, and each time he failed. Until one day, he changed his approach. Instead of setting a heroic goal, he set a simple identity. He said, for the next 30 days, I will get out of bed at the first ring of the alarm. Not 5 a.m., not perfection, not a complete life overhaul, just first ring. And for 30 days, he did it. And on day 31, he told me, Jim, I didn't become a morning person. I became a person who keeps his word. And once you become that person, everything rises with you, your confidence, your posture, your decisions, your destiny. Identity is powerful because it removes negotiation. When you become the kind of person who works out, you don't ask, should I exercise today? You exercise because it is who you are. When you become the kind of person who saves money, you don't debate every purchase. You save because it is who you are. When you become the kind of person who studies, who plans, who executes, you don't wrestle with the behavior. The behavior flows from identity. At this level, consistency becomes easier, not because the work changes, but because you change. And once identity shifts, you move into a rhythm where you stop doubting yourself and start depending on yourself. A rhythm where the discipline no longer feels like a burden, it feels like alignment. A rhythm where habits become automatic and success becomes the natural outcome of who you are. And when identity strengthens, you become ready for level 3, the level where the world begins to respond to your consistency, where opportunities start to seek you, where your value becomes undeniable. Now that you understand how identity takes shape, it's time to talk about the engine that drives you from identity to mastery. Because even with a strong identity, you still need something more. You need the right surroundings, the right structures, and the right start to each day. And let me tell you something I've taught for many years. Don't trust yourself to always be strong. Trust yourself to be smart. Strength will fail you. Motivation will fail you. But good design, good systems, a good environment, those will carry you when your willpower is low. Let's begin with the environment. Your environment is powerful, far more powerful than most people care to admit. You can't expect to build discipline in a place filled with temptation. You can't expect to grow around people who mock growth. And you certainly can't expect consistency if your world is arranged for convenience, comfort, and distraction. I used to say, if you hang around with 5 confident people, you'll become the 6th. If you hang around with 5 misfits, well, you'll become the 6th of those too. Your environment either supports your plan or supports your feelings, but it cannot support both. If your kitchen is filled with junk food, don't blame your lack of willpower. If your bedroom is designed for scrolling, Don't blame your lack of discipline. If your friends celebrate shortcuts and mock ambition, don't blame your inconsistency. The environment quietly trains you every hour of every day. So the question isn't, am I disciplined enough? The real question is, have I made discipline the easiest option? Next, let's talk about systems, one of the great secrets of consistent performance. A system is simply a pre-decided way of behaving. It frees you from decision fatigue. It eliminates the daily debate. It ensures that your plan doesn't rely on whether you're feeling heroic today. You don't need inspiration to follow a system, just structure. A system might be as simple as laying out your clothes the night before, preparing your reading list in advance, setting a fixed time for your workout, or evening planning where you decide your top 3 priorities before you sleep. When everything is pre-decided, your feelings don't get a vote. They can complain, but they can't override the system. This is how ordinary people begin to perform like pros, not by being extraordinary, but by being organized. And now, let's talk about mornings. Mornings, my friends, are the golden gate of consistency. The great performers I've studied over the decades all share one thing in common. They do not let their mornings happen by accident. They win the first hour of the day. And if you win the first hour, you control the day. If you control the day, you shape the week. If you shape the week, you shape the year. And if you shape enough years, you shape a destiny. Let me tell you why the first hour is so important. When you start your day by following your plan, even in a small way, stretching for 5 minutes, reading for 10 minutes, planning your day, your mind says, today we are in charge. And that identity carries forward into every task. But if you start your day in reaction, scrolling, rushing, stumbling out of bed, your mind receives a different message. Today, feelings are in charge. And whichever message you send in the first hour tends to echo through every hour that follows. Finally, let's touch on accountability. Accountability is not weakness, it's wisdom. When someone else knows your plan, there is a little more weight behind your promises. Just a daily check-in, a simple message, a small report, enough to keep you honest. The world's greatest performers rely on accountability. Why shouldn't you? Together, your environment, your systems, your mornings, your accountability, these become the engine that takes a strong identity and turns it into reliable performance. They remove friction. They remove doubt. They remove the daily battles. They help you live in alignment with the person you decided to become. And once these forces are working for you, you enter the next level, a level where consistency becomes so strong, so stable, so undeniable, that the world itself begins to respond. Now we arrive at level 3, and this, my friends, is where life begins to reward you. This is where consistency matures into something powerful, something valuable, something unmistakable. I call this level marketplace power, and the person who reaches it becomes, in the best sense of the word, dangerous. Now, let me explain what I mean by dangerous. When you reach level 3, you become dangerous to every limitation that once held you back. Dangerous to procrastination. Dangerous to excuses. Dangerous to the weaker version of yourself that once controlled your life. And most importantly, you become dangerous in the marketplace because your consistency starts producing something the world pays for. Value. You see, the marketplace is very fair. It doesn't care about your feelings. It doesn't care about your intentions. It doesn't care about your dreams. It only cares about your value. And value, my friends, is built through consistency, not occasional flashes of brilliance, not rare moments of inspiration, but daily improvement, repeated action, reliable execution. Let me give you a picture. Think of the salesperson who makes their calls every single day, rain or shine, excited or tired, inspired or discouraged. At first, they may look no different from anyone else. But give them a year, and their pipeline begins to look different. Give them 2 years, and their reputation begins to look different. Give them 5 years, and their income begins to look very different. Or consider the writer who publishes weekly. The first 10 pieces, not much. The first year, still not extraordinary. But after consistent creation, consistently learning, consistently improving, their work finds its audience. opportunities multiply. People say, how did you do it? And the writer smiles, because the answer's simple, one page at a time. You see, the world is full of people who start. The world is full of people who dabble. The world is full of people who occasionally try. But the world has very few who show up every day. And when you become one of the few, the marketplace notices. It always does. At level 3, something else occurs, something remarkable. You begin to experience compound trust. Trust is a currency far more valuable than money. And when you show up consistently, when you do what you say, when you repeat your disciplines day after day, people start to trust you. Your audience trusts you. Your clients trust you. Your partners trust you. And eventually, life itself begins to trust you. Let me tell you something important. Most people quit right before consistency becomes visible. Right before the podcast gains momentum. Right before the business turns profitable. Right before the body begins to change. Right before the skill becomes mastery. And because they quit early, they never taste the rewards that were already growing beneath the surface. But if you remain, if you persist, if you continue watering the seed long after others have given up, that's when the breakthrough happens. And when it happens, it looks sudden. People say, you came out of nowhere. But you know better. You didn't come out of nowhere. You came out of discipline. You came out of structure. You came out of identity. You came out of hundreds of days when nobody was clapping, when nobody was watching, when nobody even cared. And now the world cares. Now the world sees. Now the world rewards. This is the beautiful thing about level 3. Your consistency begins working for you. Your habits pay you dividends. Your reputation opens doors. Your skill compounds interest. Your identity builds confidence. And before long, you become exactly what consistency was shaping you into all along, someone capable, someone reliable, someone masterful, someone dangerous. But before we move on, there's one more truth you must understand. Level 3 isn't reached in a week or a month or even a year. It's the product of staying in the game long enough for the compounding to kick in, long enough for identity to deepen, long enough for the long-term rewards to emerge. And that brings us to the next part, how consistency transforms not just weeks or months, but years and decades. Now that we've explored marketplace power, I want to take you into a perspective most people never consider the long game. Because consistency isn't just about today, or this week, or even this year. Consistency is about what happens when you live your disciplines over decades, over seasons, over chapters of your life. You see, the human mind is built for immediacy. We want to see the result now. We want the reward today. We want the harvest before we finish planting. But life doesn't work that way. Life has seasons. And consistency is the only way to honor those seasons correctly. Let me give you a picture to hold on to. Imagine two people standing side by side, same age, same potential, same opportunities. One person follows their feelings each day. The other follows their plan. Now, in the first month, you won't see much difference. In 6 months, maybe a small difference. In a year, a noticeable difference. But give those two people 10 years, and you won't recognize them as the same. One will have built skills, confidence, reputation, health, savings, relationships, brick by brick, day by day. The other will have drifted from impulse to impulse, starting and stopping, gaining and losing, hoping and regretting. Their lives will look like they came from different planets. And in a sense, they did. They came from different patterns. Consistency isn't about intensity. It's about direction. When your direction is correct, time becomes your ally. Time multiplies your effort. Time compounds your discipline. Time turns small wins into big wins and daily habits into lifelong transformations. Let me share something I've always found remarkable. Most people dramatically overestimate what they can do in a week and dramatically underestimate what they can do in a decade. They want the fast change, the instant upgrade. But if they took that same desire and aimed it toward the long game, the results would be incredible. Think about health. One workout won't change your life. But 3 workouts a week for 10 years, that will change not only your body, but your energy, your confidence, your future. Think about money. Saving a small amount this week won't make you wealthy, but saving consistently for 20 years, that can change your family tree. Think about learning. Reading a book this month won't make you a genius, but reading for 30 minutes a day for 20 years, that can make you one of the most educated people in any room. The difference is not intelligence, not talent, not luck. The difference is consistency applied long enough for time to pay you interest. But here's the problem. Most people quit before time wakes up. They quit before the compounding effect begins. They abandon the habit before the habit begins to reward them. They plant seeds in spring but walk away in summer, never staying long enough to see the harvest. I've watched people give up on their business in year 2 right before their name was about to mean something. I've watched people quit learning a skill in month 8 right before mastery begins to accelerate. I've watched people abandon their health plan in week 10 right before their body was going to show the first real signs of transformation. This is why the long game matters. Without it, every short-term challenge becomes a reason to quit. With it, every short-term challenge simply becomes part of the journey. So let me give you a rule to live by. What you practice daily, you become permanently. Practice disorganization, and you become disorganized. Practice excuses, and you become a master excuse maker. Practice discipline, and you become disciplined. Practice character, and you become a person of character. Practice consistency, and you become unstoppable. The long game played well turns ordinary people into extraordinary achievers. Not suddenly, but steadily. Not dramatically, but decisively. Not by chance, but by choice. And now, with all of this in place, the foundations, the levels, the engine, and the long game, we are ready for the final part. The part where you take everything you've heard and turn it into a personal call to action. Now we've traveled the full journey through the drift, through the disciplines, through the identity, through the marketplace, and through the long game. And the question that remains, the only question that matters is this: what will you do next? Because here is the truth I want you to leave with today. Your future is not determined by luck. It is not determined by talent. It is not determined by circumstance. Your future is determined by the small disciplines you choose and repeat every day starting now. Not next year, not next month, not next Monday, now. Some people wait for the perfect time, but perfect time never arrives. Some wait for motivation, but motivation is a visitor. You cannot build a life around a visitor. Some wait for clarity, but clarity is earned after you begin, not before. You don't need a perfect plan to start. You need a simple plan, a small plan, a doable plan, and a commitment to follow it whether you feel like it or not. So let me ask you something important, something only you can answer. Who has been in charge of your life, your plan, or your feelings? Because your answer to this single question predicts the quality of your next 10 years. If your feelings have been in charge, don't be discouraged. Most people start there. But today can be the turning point. Today can be the day you say, I'm ready to lead my life instead of drifting through it. You don't need to overhaul everything. You don't need to conquer the world by Friday. You simply need to choose one small discipline, a discipline you can perform even on your worst day, and keep it for the next 30 days. Not 30 days of perfection, 30 days of commitment. And as you do that, something powerful begins to happen. You begin to trust yourself. And that trust is the birthplace of every great transformation. When you trust yourself, discipline becomes natural. When discipline becomes natural, identity shifts. When identity shifts, consistency becomes your lifestyle. And when consistency becomes your lifestyle, the world begins to move out of your way. You stop drifting. You start steering. You build momentum. You grow confidence. You rise through the levels. You become, step by step, someone dangerous to excuses, dangerous to limitations, dangerous to anything less than your potential. But it all begins with one decision. Starting today, I will follow my plan, not my feelings. Your future is watching you. Your potential is waiting for you. And it's waiting for one simple proof, one small act of discipline that says, yes, I am ready. Yes, I am committed. Yes, I am stepping into level 1 today. Ladies and gentlemen, if you take nothing else from this entire talk, take this. Don't wish for a better life. Design one. And begin that design by keeping the smallest promise you make to yourself today. That single step is the beginning of the next 10 years.